this episode, I'm going to be showing you how to use Apple Numbers, which is the software that comes with the MacBook or the MacBook Pro or the iMac. This is the spreadsheet software that you can use like Excel to do multiplication, addition, subtraction, tally things up. So I'm recording this on the 30th of September, which happens to be the last day of influenza season. So we're going to use the CDC's data, and this lesson is going to be how to download data from the CDC, create a spreadsheet with that data, and then build charts. So I'm going to show you how I do this. And we begin at the CDC's website. So I'm using the CDC's flu season page. So this is flu/season, and there's all kinds of great information here. And they also have a system that they call FluView. And FluView tracks mortality, pneumonia and influenza mortality surveillance from the National Center for Health Statistics Mortality Surveillance System. So this is official CDC data. And what's interesting about this system is before coronavirus, it was used to track influenza and pneumonia, PNI. That's all there was. And then when COVID showed up, they incorporated COVID into the system. And so we can look at COVID and influenza side by side, or we can look at just influenza. So for purposes of the spreadsheet training, what I'm going to do is use this FluView application. And we're going to look at the pneumonia and influenza versus the coronavirus version. And we'll start out with the most basic, and we're going to download some data. So why don't we get started? So it begins with the website, which is gis.cdc.gov/grasp/FluView/mortality.html. And I'll put that link up here on the screen. All right, I'm going to bring my cursor to this download button, downloads, green button, upper right. And right now I have selected pneumonia and influenza, PNI. I do not have COVID-19 because I'm starting out basic. We'll get to the more advanced stuff in a moment. So if I click on downloads, it's going to ask me, do you want the data as displayed or do you want custom data? I'm going to go with data as displayed. Again, I hit the green download data button and a window pops up and it says you've chosen to open this. What should we do? And it says open with, and the default on my computer is going to be numbers. So it's going to open it in this software. And this is the Apple Numbers program. So what I can do now in the spreadsheet is tally up the PNI information, right? So what we just downloaded was 2016 week 40 through 2021 week 37. Now we're in week 39 right now, but the reporting trails by a couple weeks. And what we're going to do is chart this data. Now the first thing we want to do is look at, well, what information did we just download? So let's go across the top and see what do we have here. All right, so first it has area, sub-area, age group, season, and week. Now the first three columns are really not that important to me, so I'm going to get rid of them. I don't really need them. So I'm going to go to delete selected columns. Now, how did I select those 3 columns? I clicked on the top of the column heading. We see it says D, E, F. If I click on A and then I hold down the Command key, the one that looks like a 4-leaf clover, and I click B, that gets highlighted at the same time, and C, now that gets highlighted. And then there's a little down arrow. I'm going to click on that and say delete selected columns because I don't really need those. All right, now it tells me the season, the week, and it's got threshold, baseline, percent PNI. I don't need these 3 columns. So C, D, and E. I'm going to get rid of those. Those are noise. All right, now we're getting into the heart of the matter. The number of influenza deaths, the number of pneumonia deaths. Then it tells you the total number of deaths from everything. And that's really not that meaningful to me right now. Nor is percent complete. So I'm going to get rid of percent complete. And total deaths, instead of that, let's make it total PNI deaths. That's what we're looking for. All right, total PNI deaths. And instead of the number that's in here, we're going to make it equal to a formula. And the way you do that is you click on the cell and you click the equal sign. And then it pops up this little formula box. And so it wants to know, well, what are you thinking? So I'm going to click on the number of influenza deaths, 18. I'm going to tell it I want you to take that and I want you to add it. So I hit plus the number of pneumonia deaths and I click on that cell. So if I click on the 18 cell and then I type the plus and then I click on the number of pneumonia deaths cell and then the little green check mark here, if I click that, now the formula is in that cell. And it knows to add the 3024 to the 18 and it gets 3042. So now I want to copy that formula all the way down the spreadsheet so that it's going to add influenza and pneumonia deaths to one another to give us total PNI deaths. That's what we want. So if I click the cell that has the formula, it's a little yellow dot here. And if I click that little yellow dot, it'll let me drag the formula all the way down the spreadsheet. And what that does is it adds the PNI numbers together for every column. Now, the other thing that's real helpful is if you click on any one of these first row titles, number of influenza deaths, number of pneumonia deaths, row 1. When you click on row 1, click this little down arrow, freeze header rows. Now when we scroll, it leaves the labels there. It's a little bit more helpful. Also on column E, to show up as a number with a little thousands thing in there. Okay. So we're making progress. I'm going to save this spreadsheet. And we now have influenza, pneumonia, and PNI deaths from, this is the first week of October, week 40 of 2016, all the way through 2 weeks ago. So let's take a look at what the PNI deaths look like on the chart. Now, how do we do the charting? Up on top, there's a couple buttons. And one of the buttons looks like a little bar chart. And it says, choose a chart to add to the spreadsheet. So if I click the button, I'm shown 2D, 3D, and interactive. I'm going to go with 3D, and I'm picking the first one on the upper left, which is a bar chart. So I'm choosing this first item here. I click on it, and it pops the template for a chart into the spreadsheet. And there's a little button down here that says Add Chart Data. So if I click the blue button, Add Chart Data, now this is important. The first thing you highlight is going to be the thing that's going to code in blue. So if I go to Total PNI Deaths and I click on the first number that appears here, and then I just drag my mouse down the screen, it's charting the PNI deaths all the way back in time, all right, all the way to the present day. And I'm going to go all the way down here. All right, so that is PNI deaths from October 2016 to the present day. Now, it's still rudimentary. The table's not properly laid out. The x-axis has a bunch of nonsense here, so I'm going to show you how to fix that. The first thing I do is I click Done in the lower right corner here. And now to fix all this untitled x-axis nonsense, I click any one of these along the x-axis. And now in the upper right, it says Axis Labels under the Format tab. A little paintbrush here for formatting. And when I hit the paintbrush, the format tray comes out. And here it says Label References, Unlimited. Whoa, I click in there and it shows me all this stuff. Well, I want to select all. To do that, I hit Command-A. And it selects all that, and I hit backspace to get rid of all that junk. And now I'm going to scroll back to our table and choose the week number, because the week number is really what the x-axis is what week was it in each year. And then I click the little green check box there, and that should have fixed our chart. There we go. Now, we don't have to see so many labels. That's quite a few. So over here on the right side where it talks about the labels, axis labels, category labels, it says auto fit. We can choose how many we want, custom category labels. And we can say that we only want them every 10 weeks or every 12 weeks or every 13 weeks. Now every 13 weeks is a fiscal quarter. So that's pretty helpful. That makes it a little bit easy. So 13 weeks is good. And we're making progress here. Now if I click on the chart, now I get that 3D rotator. And I can move the chart around a little bit, right? That's pretty cool. All right. If I click on the chart, I can drag it into the middle of the screen. And I can click the legend. And I can move the legend anywhere I want on the chart. And if I don't like the way the legend reads, I can change it. Instead of total P&I deaths, it's actually weekly P&I deaths. That's what the chart is showing. So each week, how many people died of P&I. Now again, if you click the chart, you can rotate it. And over in the formatting tray, I can do something called chart depth. And this is where I can make the chart have a little bit more 3D look to it. And that's a nice look there. So this gives us a sense of these influenza seasons. If I come up to the top and I click the little T, there's a little T, letter T for text, and I get a text box. And what I can do here is put in the year. So where I have week 53 here, I know, well, that's when 2021 was starting, right? So this is 2021. And now I can copy that. And this makes it a little bit easier for people to understand what they're looking at on the chart. So I'll put in 2020, 2021, etc., 2019 back here. And so now when you look at the chart, you're getting a much better understanding of how many people died each season from influenza, P&I, and how remarkable this most recent season was, given what we just experienced. All right, so this is the 2021 calendar year here. Here's the 2020 calendar year here. Here's the 2019, 2018, 2017. Back here, this is 2016. All the way back here, that's 2016. And what you see is that in 2021, we had numbers like, just remarkable. 2020 was bad, but 2021 was stunning. And that's what we see when we go and chart these numbers from the CDC. Right, so if I save that, right now I can add a title to the chart. And what I like to do to add a title, when I go to the format tray over on the right, you can click Chart Options Title. And then what I typically do for the title is I go back to the website. So let's go back to our browser. And from the browser, typically I just highlight the name, whatever it is on top of the screen, and I copy that. And I bring that back over to the spreadsheet. So let me take you guys back to the spreadsheet. And now in the spreadsheet, I go up to the title and I paste whatever it was that was on the page where I got the data from. So this is pneumonia and influenza mortality surveillance from the National Center for Health Statistics. And the name of the system is the Mortality Surveillance System. And then I'll put in what it is we're looking at. So we're looking at 2016 until present day, and then parenthetically, September 30th, 2021. And then this is influenza P&I deaths by week, USA only. And that is pretty much how I do it. If I want to select these little calendar dates down here, I have to highlight the whole area and move it all together. And let's take a snapshot of that. And I'll post this on the community page. And you guys will get to see that this is the one we just made with that. And just did this live. All right, so that's how I make that. Now, this is just influenza. There's no COVID-19 in here. But we got it from a website that tracks both together. So now that we've tracked one item and built a chart for one thing, let's build a chart for two things and track influenza and coronavirus side by side. So in order to do that, I'm going to close this and we're going to go back to the browser. And in the browser, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change up top where it says pneumonia and influenza P&I. Now I'm going to click pneumonia, influenza, and COVID PIC. And now we have new data. So now I click the green download button again. It says data as displayed. I click the download data again. You've chosen to open. What should Firefox do? I'm saying open with, and it's going to open numbers one more time. The difference between the last spreadsheet and this spreadsheet is this one's got COVID deaths and influenza and pneumonia deaths. So the stuff that I got rid of last time, I probably want to get rid of the same stuff again. So the sub area, this age group, the season I need. So I'm going to keep that. So let's delete those. And then the threshold, the baseline, the percent PIC. Don't really need that. All right, now we got our influenza, pneumonia, COVID deaths, total PIC. I'm going to change that in total deaths, and percent complete. Percent complete we don't really need. And total deaths we don't really need. And instead of total PIC, I'm going to make that total P&I. And the reason I'm doing that is I already have the COVID number, so I don't need to add it back in again. So if I want this to be P&I again, I do my formula trick. And the formula trick is you click on the cell, you hit the equal sign. And when you hit the equal sign, you now point to the cells that you want to add up. So I'm going to point to influenza, and then I type plus, and now I click on pneumonia. So influenza plus pneumonia is P&I, and then I click the green arrow. And so now the total P&I number is 3,042. And I showed you last time, there's this little yellow dot here. If I click that yellow dot and drag it down, it's going to copy that same formula concept to all of these cells. So every one of these now should be the sum total of influenza plus pneumonia. And that's what we see. Now the cell next to it are the COVID deaths. Number of COVID deaths. Total P&I. Maybe I should change that to P&I deaths. So now we have our P&I deaths and our COVID deaths side by side in the spreadsheet, going all the way back to week 40 of 2016. So let's make another chart. I go up to the top of the page where this little icon shows like a little blue chart, and I click on that, again, 3D, and I'm going to pick the one on the upper left, this bar chart, and it gives me this chart template. So I say Add Chart Data. I click that. Now, the big thing again is the coloring. So whatever I choose first is going to be blue. So I want to keep P&I deaths blue. So I'm going to start with P&I deaths, and I'm going to click the first one, hold the mouse button down, and drag. And as I drag, you're going to see the chart build over time this model of the P&I deaths. Now this should look real familiar, right? This is basically the same shape we just did. We just did this earlier, but we didn't have the COVID data. So the shape is the same, and we're going to fix that x-axis again. Remember the x-axis was weird? So we're going to do that again. I click on it. I go up to my format tray where it says Label References. I click in that cell, and then all the bad stuff shows up. So I hit Command A to select all, backspace to get rid of it, and then I go over to the table, and I highlight the correct stuff, which is the week numbers. I call this MMWR week number. All right. So now we're making progress, but I have too many labels down on that x-axis. So instead of auto-fitting, I'm going to choose custom category intervals, and I'll go back to 13. That's what we did last time. And the reason 13 is useful is because there's 13 weeks in a quarter. 13 times 4 is 52. If I click on the table again, I can change that depth with this depth slider. And I can rotate the table a little bit like this. If I want to add commas to the y-axis, I change the value labels in the format tray to number, and then add the thousands separator. So this is total P&I deaths right now. Now, how do we add the COVID deaths? Well, that's pretty easy. We hit the Edit Data References button down here on the bottom, and now we get to go back to the table and add more stuff. So what's interesting is that the CDC added the number of COVID deaths going all the way back to 2016 to a system that had been in place. So we got a lot of zeros here. So we're going to add 0000 from 2016 all the way till, I guess, January 2020. And that's when we'll see the COVID deaths show up. And so that's what we get here on the chart. So now what you're looking at now are the two columns side by side. And what I just did was I resized the legend by grabbing the little dot on the edge. Resized it. And I can move it wherever I want here on the chart. Now I can also click on the chart. I can also click on the chart. I get my 3D rotator. And I can rotate the chart in 3D. Once again, we can add the title. So if I click here, click on title, if I go over to the website and I copy what it said at the top of that report, and I just paste that in here, usually that's somewhat adequate. All right, and so this is how I build these charts, and this is how I use Apple Numbers to download the data and chart it. It's really kind of that simple. Now what we can do is we can tally this up. So if we wanted to see how many people died in a given season, so let's do that. So let's go to the current season that's coming to an end right now, which is the 2020-2021 season. And if we make a space in here, it'll be a little easier to see. All right, so week 40 is when it began, and we're going to build a new chart. So this new chart is just going to be the data that starts at week 40. So we'll start with P&I deaths, for this season. This is the current influenza season that today's the last day of. And this is what that looks like. Just influenza. Now let's change that x-axis again. So this is the 2020-2021 influenza season. And what you're seeing so far is influenza only. So this is influenza PNI deaths by week. Now, if I want to add COVID-19 deaths by week, what I do is I click on the chart, I say Edit Data References, I'm going to scroll down to the same section I charted. See how it's colored blue? And starting in the same week, I now choose the COVID deaths. And so now we've got the blue and the green side by side. And when I hit done and scroll back up to the chart, this is what we're going to see. There you go. Now the legend is off a little bit. So I'm going to move the legend, make the chart a little bigger. So to make the chart bigger, you click on it and you grab one of these corner dots and grab that and drag. Then your legend is going to be in the wrong spot. So again, grab one of these little dots on the side and resize it a little bit. And then you can just click on it and drag it around. So there you got your total PNI deaths. Let's go to the chart, click. Over in my, this is called the formatting tray over on the right. So in the formatting tray, I can make it a little deeper. Chart depth, right? Give it a little more space. Rotate it in 3D. And this is head to head. This is PNI influenza deaths and COVID deaths side by side for the season. Now, if you want to total that up and know how many that was for each, go back to the spreadsheet and just add a row down here at the bottom. And if you want to total up your PNI deaths, you hit equals and just drag your mouse or your cursor to highlight how many weeks. So I go back to week 40 and that's it. I hit the green check mark. So the total is 385,856 people that have died from pneumonia PNI, according to the CDC, PNI deaths. Then if I take that same formula and click that little yellow thing, I can drag it to the left. And what that did is it copied the formula for COVID deaths. So now we have the total number of COVID deaths is 467,553. That's everybody that died with COVID. And then this is the number of people that died with PNI, pneumonia and influenza, 385,856. And you see the charts side by side right here. So this is going back a couple years. The gap you see in this chart, that's this season. So that was week 40. And now we're almost at the end. Well, we are as I'm recording it, but they don't have the data yet. And this is how this season fits in with previous seasons. And it appears that that total number I just shared with you, which was the 385,000, the 385,000 PNI deaths for season to date. This appears to be unprecedented. I don't think that we have any other year, any other season with as many PNI deaths. So this is just, the data coming from the CDC. So when we look at this season's PNI deaths here, nothing comes close to 385,000. Last season was 274,000, and no season prior to that even came close. So this is how I use Apple numbers to chart the CDC's influenza PNI mortality data head to head, side by side, and compare it to the other pandemic. I'm John Cullen. Thanks for joining.